the Vodka Cup champions. Celtic way, wait for the ball from side to side, and then Celtic try to hide. The wait for the ball from front to back. Attack, 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 67. And then he's a bursman, the buzzing and the thousands. To see the Vodka Cup champion, 67. And then he's
Hello and welcome to episode 60 of CelticRumours TV, the Bawz Bovril podcast, with your host Mark and myself Paul. Join us on the show tonight. We have Terence, Tier161 from our forum, and Barry, Iceman, from our forum. Page to the podcast, our forum page is CelticRumours.co.uk, where Celtic supporters discuss all things Celtic. On tonight's show, we take a look at the latest news around Celtic Football Club. We will have match reaction to yesterday's victory against St. John's in the semi-final League Cup at Hampton. We will discuss the AGM meeting that was held last week by the club. We will do a look ahead to next Thursday's game in Europa League Group G against Leverkusen. And as always, if you guys in the live chat want to get involved with the show, please let us know and we will discuss any topic you have. Firstly though, before we move on with the show, Mark will talk about the Hamilton Foodbank Christmas appeal. The guy on the opposite side of the microphone with myself on the podcast has been running this Hamilton Foodbank Christmas appeal for collection for the last 5 years. Mark, on a personal note for myself, what you do for families less fortunate than ourselves. Every year for the last 5 years, you've gone out of your way to help these people. I myself witnessed the care and the love you give others, and not thinking about yourself. Your credit to yourself, your credit to your family, your credit to your wife, and your credit to this podcast. It would be nothing without you, but. If you just want to do a few shout outs, Mark, and go through this food bank with us.
Thanks very much for that, Paul. That's really kind of you to say that stuff, mate. I wasn't expecting that. You got me a wee bit off guard there. You said this is my 5th year for collecting money for the Hamilton Food Bank, and we've collected over £7,000. For a wee forum, Paul, that's fantastic. And it's not me that gets that. I don't deserve the credit for that, Paul. It's all you guys that donate every year. The other things we've done over the years, we've done Mikey's football thing, we've done that dementia walk thing for my wife's family and that, for her mum. And he's all stepped up to the plate and he's done it consistently. So it's usually you see me this, Paul. I'll just sit and press buttons, buddy, man. It's usually make this show what it is with everybody's opinions. But back to the food bank, we're ready for this year with £574, which it's only been going 3 weeks. There's a bit of feedback back in my mic. Wait, and I'll see if I can. Is that any better? Does that make it any better?
Yeah.
Is that better, Paul? Aye.
Yeah, for me anyway.
Right. So I've put a link in the description box below to the donation page. If you can get anything, that would be fantastic. If you can share it about your social medias and that as well, that would be great. Thanks very much. I'll just take a wee couple of shout outs, Paul. for the usual Tim Alloy, a Glasgow Green. I've not really heard from him now, come to think of that. I need to try and get in touch with a Glasgow Green and see how he's doing, Paul.
Mhm.
Mikey, he's up to his Oaksters and wedding arrangements, so good luck with that, Mikey. Richie ROH found out on Friday, Paul, that his latest round of treatments work, and his works pretty well. I don't know what that means. That still seems my mates like that. Has that made any difference to it? How's that going now?
Still, I don't know.
Are you can't tell, Paul? Just we sound fine each other. It's what's getting broadcast.
Song's going mad, Mark.
Uh, the Gremlins are back again. But it's still here, you, Paul.
No, you're still breaking up.
I'm still breaking up.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't understand what's happened here, Paul. It's not as if I've done anything,
No.
changed anything from the last time we done it. I'm still back on this wee old web headset.
We hang up again and we try and get try a different touch, and I try to ring you, and we see that line.
Aye, try that if you want.
Yeah. Talk now?
Hello, how's that?
No, man.
Is that not sounding right to you either?
No, no. Is the connection loose, Mark, or anything like that, the side of your...
No, it's just that wee silly jack plug thing. It's not, do you know what I mean? It's only a wee 3.5mm jack plug.
What about now, lads? What way is the sound now?
They're Gallagher saying you can hear us now.
Yeah. I'll move on so for a while, Mark, to the Celtic news.
Aye, you go.
Celtic manager and the Celtic board have decided that Celtic goalkeeper Villas Barkas' time at the club is now up. Celtic will be looking to offload the Greek goalkeeper in January for a transfer window at a cut price of £3 million. Barker has failed to make an impression since joining Celtic a year ago under previous manager Neil Lennon. A loan deal is also an option for the keeper, as Celtic want the Greek off their books as soon as possible. Liam Scales and Yozadi Yohidi will also be leaving Celtic on loan in January. Both players have found game time less frequent since joining Celtic from Sheffield Wednesday at the start of the transfer window. Mark, you came across a piece of Liam Shaw and Youssef Heedy that Ange was speaking about them themselves. What was he saying about them, Mark? That their progress is coming on, but they're more projects than first team players. He was kind of saying, was it?
No, that was basically just it, Paul. I just don't think they're at the level that they play in the first team.
Celtic youngster Brodie Patterson has talked up about his loan spell at Queen's Park last season, and he wants to follow the example of Kieran Tierney. Patterson, now 20 years old and playing with Celtic Colts team side, said his loan spell has taught him a lot about understanding the game and how important it is to be playing first team football. Patterson said he's willing to put in the hard work and is determined to follow in the footsteps of former Celtic youngster Kieran Tierney at Celtic. Celtic young goalkeeper Tony Aloiwi has impressed Ange and first team goalkeeper Joe Hart since the younger started training with Celtic first team. His football skills and his tactics with his feet has impressed the Celtic manager so highly that he's now in the process of setting up the youngster to be training with Joe Hart and Stevie Woods to help the goalkeeper progress in his Celtic career. Reports have suggested that Celtic are interested in Grimo midfielder Fernando Henrique. Henrique is promptly a central midfielder, but also can play in the defensive role and attacking role. The £800,000 rated player still only 20 years old, but has 3 years left on his contract. Are Celtic going to approach League of Ireland side Shamrock Rovers for another player? Reports in Ireland and Scotland have suggested Celtic will be looking at 23-year-old Danny Mondroe. Celtic have been tracking Mondroe since Celtic manager came across him while scouting former Shamrock Rovers player and Celtic's player Liam Scales. That's all from the latest news around the club. Mark will now bring Terence and Barry onto the show. Are the day, lads?
Just call it.
Yep. Just Terence.
Lads, how we know?
Good, Terence. Welcome back to us. It's been a while, so
It is good to see you, lads. How are you?
good. Terence, before we move on, I just wanted to get your opinion, like being from Ireland. You've said, have you seen anything of the Shamrock Rovers player that maybe he could be a Celtic player, or have you heard anything about it?
I've only heard bits and pieces, Paul, the same as yourself. But I mean, Liam Scales was supposed to be the main guy, and I mean, if Liam Scales can't get a look in at the minute with no one really there for the full-back position, obviously I know Juranovic is playing there. I don't know, will the other lad from Shamrock Rovers be tempted to come over? I mean, his game time would be like, I know it's probably going to be very, very limited, if any. You know what I mean? That's what I'd be fearful of for him. Is he just going to come over and be kind of a training and then eventually get maybe put back on loan or something like that? I don't know.
Because I was looking at him, and he only started his professional career at 21 years old. He was kind of late to the game. Before joining Shamrock Rovers, he played with another League of Ireland side, Bohemians, scored 14 goals for them in his first season. And this season with Shamrock Rovers, he scored 15 goals. But when he was with Bawz, he was kind of kind of a more central role. He used to stay outside the box, and most of his goals would come outside the box. But since he's been joining Bawz, he's come an all-round attacking midfielder. 10 of his goals this season have come inside the box, and only 5 have been outside the box. So there seems to be progress there, that he's learning the role quickly. Do you know what I mean? He seems to be able to adapt to different roles. And my only concern is what Terence was saying, like Liam Scales was supposed to come in and do a job, and we haven't seen Liam Scales, Mark. Could be the same kind of situation here. Like, are we just signing him to make up numbers within our squad?
There, Barry.
Yeah, I'm here, guys.
Thanks very much for coming on, Barry.
No worries at all,
Just
boys.
still trying to fix this sound out, Paul, so just use chat away now, lads.
Barry was just talking about the Shamrock Rovers player there, Danny Mundrew, and it's another strange one for me, because I've watched him. I watched the match on Friday, Shamrock Rovers against Drogheda, and he's great pass for the goal. He's a killer pass and he's killer speed. Like, is it going to be more of a kind of another signing to make up squad numbers, or is he going to come in and make an impression? Because I personally, and Terence is saying there as well, like that, I can't see him coming into the first team, Barry.
Yeah, I'd probably tend to agree with both yourself and Terence. For me, it would potentially be a signing that would be a squad player, and for me, that's not really what we need at the minute. We could do with players that are first team ready. We've kind of seen it in the summer, and even going back to the summer before, when we mentioned guys like Luke O'Connell, Liam Shaw, Uragide. These were guys that were playing for their team. And Connell was in there at Bolton, and he was getting first team recognition. He even managed to get himself in an Ireland squad. It was the same with Liam Shaw. He was, the up and coming prospect at Sheffield Wednesday, and Uragide, the fullback. These were guys that were playing first team football every week, and they've come into the club. And unfortunately, I don't know if their progress has been hindered or what have you, but they're not playing. They're not getting any sort of game time at all, even on the bench. I think Uragide and Shaw have been on the bench, but they've certainly never made it on the pitch. So it's a bit strange, For me, like I say, we need guys that are ready to come in and compete for a first team position, not guys that are just going to come in and play the odd game or cover, if there's an injury to certain players. I think we should be looking to bring in guys that are going to come into the first team.
And he's not going to be like a project sign either, Barry. Do you know what I mean? He's 23 years of age. Like, he's not a young lad coming over.
Yeah,
he can't go down to the coach team, and you know what I mean?
Yeah. He's not going to come in and play youth football, So, I mean, the other side of it is you potentially hope that he's somebody like, not in terms of style of play, but like maybe a Paddy McCourt or a Tom Rogic, who sort of came in from the unknown, like Ireland and the Australian League, and they kind of hit the ground running. So you kind of hope that it might be one of those types of signings. But like I say, without knowing too much about the guy, it wouldn't be one that I would think would come in and be straight into the first team. I think it would be a strange one if he was to come and replace anyone that's currently in the first team.
Moving on, of course, we know who we're going to be facing in the final. We talk about that later on, but we look back to yesterday's game. First, lads, Celtic won, St Johnstone 0 in the Scottish League Cup. James Forrest doing what he does best, stepping up in big games, scoring a goal. Terence, I'll start with you first. It was kind of a sluggish game again, Terence, going back, like trying to break St Johnstone down. We knew what way they were going to play. They're going to be back to the walls, but it paid off. Ange kept with the system. He knew eventually he was going to break them down. But it's kind of a regular occurrence under Ange that we failed to kind of break down these teams early in the match, Terence, don't it?
Yeah, we started very well yesterday. I thought the first 10 or 15 minutes, the pace looked good, the passing looked good. Turnbull had a great chance after maybe 5 or 6 minutes. Thought he should have done better. But the one thing that really struck me was, and I don't know if he thought the same, the pace seemed to drop. As in the pace, the speed, the speed that the ball was moving and the speed that the players were moving. We just seemed to slow down the whole tempo, and it allowed St Johnstone, and it allows the like Livingston when you're playing these teams, especially St Johnstone yesterday, they just sat back and the ball wasn't being moved quick enough for me, and players weren't moving quick enough to get into space. Like we dominated the ball, but we didn't really create a huge amount of chances, you know. And I do think when Celtic play at a high tempo and a high passing, especially, I think even some people had kind of mentioned it that on the 67th minute with that amazing tribute to Bertie Hall, it nearly kind of lifted the team and they kind of stepped up another gear. And certainly the last 15 minutes, the pace picked up again, and you could see there was more and more chances coming. And thankfully, the chance did fall to James Forrest, and he stuck it away. But they just found it very, very hard to break. I think when they pass the ball so slow and the pace is slowed down, we struggle against these teams that just literally put 10 men behind the ball. So, it was one of those games that I thought during the season so far we could have lost like we have, or we would have maybe gone to extra time. But thankfully, they stepped it up a little bit. They got the pace up a bit more, and obviously James E. Forrest finished it, and thankfully we're into the final.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the main thing, Barry. That look, we got the job done in the end, but Celtic should be more comfortable in getting a decent scoreline against teams like St. Johnstone, Livingston. But it's kind of been a struggle against these teams this season. Like Terence was saying there, like we kind of slow down the tempo when we're playing defenses kind of back to the wall, or you know, what is it like? I was kind of thinking that when we're playing these teams and we can't break them down, Barry, do the Celtic players maybe overthink their pass then, or does that slow down? Are our players spending kind of more time in the ball than they should be, and that's allowing St. Johnstone players get into their position that we can't break them down then?
I mean, I think first and foremost, you're spot on, Paul. The objective of any cup tie is to get to the next round, and Celtic achieved that yesterday. But I mean, for me, Terence is spot on. I had a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, and it is very laboured passing. You know, that there is a real, lack of tempo, and it has been like that for a few weeks now. We saw it against Livingston. We had 85% possession, but only 2 attempts on target. So, for me, if you move the ball quicker, you're going to find it easier to break teams down. What I would say is I think we were very comfortable. Yes, at no point did I feel like St. Johnstone were, building periods of pressure or, looked like they were going to potentially...
They were playing to maybe get into penalties, Barry, or something like that. Something,
Paul, at the end of the day, there's two sides to it. Obviously we focus on the Celtic then, but, St. Johnstone were never going to be easy to break down. So no. I know you said we should be beating teams like that more comfortably, but, St. Johnstone have proved in the past that they are a tough team to break down. They're probably the most organised team in the league. They all know their jobs, and they proved that last year by winning 2 cups. They know how to sort of play in these games, and they know how to deliver. So they set up their stall. It was no surprise they were going to be organised, they were going to work hard, and they were going to really try and press us. But for me, I thought we're very comfortable in the game. But like you both guys have said, we struggled at times. We weren't quick at passing the ball. It was a slow tempo, and like in the final third, we didn't create very much. But it was one of them kind of played out the way I think probably a lot of us saw, that eventually we were going to get that chance, and it was just whether we'd take it or not. And we did, and it fell to James Forrest, and he put it away. And like I say, after that, I don't think St. Johnstone overly threatened us. 15 minutes to go, you would kind of expect them to throw caution to the wind and really push to try and get an equaliser. Apart from 1 or 2 sort of scary slack passes from us, I don't think they built any pressure. And I think that's a sign of what Celtic are just now. We seem to have lots and lots of possession. The possession stats, Buzz will be the man for that. But to be up in the high 80s and sort of low to high 80s possession, that's unheard of. But that's where we are at the minute. The only thing is, what we need to do now is we need to do something with the possession we have. We need to move it quicker. We need to create chances in the final third and really put teams to the sword, because I think that's where we've kind of struggled a bit this season.
Just looking at the stats, as said there, shots Celtic had 16, St. Johnstone had 7. On target, Celtic only had 3. To St. Johnstone 2. Possession, we had 80%. St. Johnstone had 20 passes. We had 754 passes. and our pass accuracy was 86%. Like that's what you're saying, Barry. Like there is improvements there. Like our passing accuracy is unbelievable. Like 89% of a pass accuracy, and it's not all moving the ball sideways and backwards like last season. We are trying to move the ball forward. It's just trying to get that final over that final hurdle and get the shots and go, because like 16 shots and only having 3 on target with 89% pass accuracy, it is kind of, I won't say concerning, but we need to be kind of getting these 16 shots on target as well, don't we? You know.
Well, that's the thing. We need to be working the keeper more,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, certainly. But it seems to be similar patterns every game. Like I say, it's round about the high 700s, 800 passes a game. But we need that to be sort of in the final third. We need producing performances like we did sort of the early part of Ange's tenure, when we were putting teams like St John's, not St Johnstone, St Mirren, Dundee, Hearts. These performances were really, really good. We've kind of dropped off that a bit, but I mean, what we need to remember is we're still a work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
This
is
still
only
early,
5 months, like 5 months.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Yeah. And we can see the type of football he's wanting to play. He's got an identity. He's got a style. Now, I'm sure with each game that passes, we are going to get better and better. We seem to have a relatively settled team now. He knows the team that is going to play for the most part. And like I say, we shouldn't look too down on it. It wasn't a great performance, but the end result is we're in a cup final. Andrew's in his first cup final. We're going there to hopefully go and win our first trophy. And like I said, at the start of the game, start of 90 minutes, that's the end product. That's what we want. We want to be in the heart. We want to be in the final. The fans going to the cup, and us hopefully lifting that silverware come December.
Mm-hmm. Mark, just go back to what Barry's saying there, and you look back to the last 2 seasons, and maybe under the last season under Brendan Rodgers, like you couldn't really say Celtic had an identity, but since Ange came in and the progress we made under him, what kind of team Celtic are now, don't you? We have an identity. We know the way he wants to play. The players know the way Ange wants to play. It all seems to be kind of clicking after 5 months. We thought it could be longer, but it seems to be clicking every day. We kind of see Ange, don't it?
Can you hear me, Paul?
Yeah.
Aye. Is it sound any better this time?
No, you're still bad, Mark.
I don't know what's done here.
I say try your mic, Mark. Put in your mic.
Is that any better now?
Try now. Say something, Mark.
Has that made any difference now?
Seems a bit better to me anyway.
I can still cutting back. I can see it watching the kind of wee gauges the sound in that.
Yeah, there's a bit of interference there as well, Mark, still.
I'll need to try and have a look at that. Paul.
Yeah,
keep
I go to Terence. Terence, I just come to you with that question that what Barry was saying there last, Mark. Like, one thing you can say on the Ange is that this Celtic team has an identity, that we didn't have the last couple of seasons.
Oh yeah, I fully agree with what Barry was saying there as well. You can see the way Ange wants to play. It's set out, and like we can compare to the last 12 months or before that under Lennon, you can nearly name the starting 11 within probably one player. We can nearly name the players that are going to start nearly every single game for Celtic at the minute. And you can see the way what they're trying to play. You can see what Ange is trying to do. And I mean, when it's done right and when it's done the way he wants it to be done, it's a joy to watch, and it's very hard to defend. And like as we were saying, even yesterday's game mightn't have been the best, but we beat the cup holders, so we're into the final. And the way Ange has playing, like he has players there with so much skill and so much talent, with your Kyogos and Jota, and even Abadai yesterday. I know he was a bit quiet, but Callum McGregor stepped back up. The guys at the back all look comfortable. Juranovic looks a super player. Joe Hart. It's just high. It's when he gets it right. It's just high tempo football, and a lot of teams will find it hard to live with. But as you said, he definitely has a way he wants to play, and it's very, very clear, and it's great to see. You know,
Barry, just going on the defence, and when I've been watching the last couple of games and all the abuse that Starfelt was getting, saying he wasn't good enough and stuff like that, and just before he got injured, he seemed to pick up a good partnership with Vickers, and he seemed to come more settled. The defence came more settled, and I just got the impression since he got injured, the defence started coming a little shaky, that these wee little mistakes started coming back in, kind of misplaced passes. Like, Welsh is still kind of a learning progress, and big games, like, we seem to be kind of struggling or nervous at the back end. Do you think maybe that's down to maybe Starfelt being out of the defence, that Vickers is kind of learning a new partnership now with Welsh, and they're trying to get used to each other?
You know what, Paul? I actually think I've actually been relatively happy and impressed with the defence this season. I think I'm right in saying we've conceded the least amount of goals in the league. Now, don't get me wrong. There is times, and it was Starfelt. You know, for me, he's not the greatest on the ball. I don't think that's his game. I don't think that's his sort of qualities. I think he's an out-and-out defender. He likes to win his tackles and try and win his headers. But on the ball, I think that was probably the weaker part of the game. Carter Vickers, for me, is absolute Rolls Royce. I think he's absolutely terrific. I'd love to see him signed up on a permanent deal. See, for a guy he's maybe not the tallest defender, I don't know. He must be around about the 6 foot mark, 6'1" even. He's fantastic in the air, and he's solid. He's so strong and powerful. And you seen yesterday, he's got a pass on him as well. He had a couple of diagonals to Jota. So, I mean, what I would say is, under the cross ball, we are a wee bit slack facing crosses, and it has been an Achilles heel for us for a few seasons now. But I would say this season, although I think there is a stat that says the majority of goals have come from crosses, I would say we'll look a bit better than that. With regards to Welsh coming in, Paul, I've got absolutely no problem at all with Welsh coming in. I think he's a cracking young player. If anything, I would say he's probably a bit better on the ball than Starfelt, a bit more comfortable on the ball, but he is still a young player, still learning the game. But like you say, that's been the only sort of tweak, has been the Starfelt Welsh sort of replacing each other. The other one, Ralston's been a mainstay, Carter Vickers has been a mainstay. Okay, the left back again with Taylor at the start of the season, but delighted with Juranovic. I think he's a very, very good footballer. I think I said in my last podcast, it was a good while ago, maybe even a couple of months ago, I'd like to see Juranovic take up his normal position. See, now I've probably flipped that, because there's no way you can drop Ralston. He is growing into becoming a fine footballer.
Even his attacking play, Barry, like Vlasin, sometimes there looks like a winger, the way he gets up and down that line, and his distribution of the ball, like some fine crosses there Ralston puts into that area.
He's been so impressive, Paul, and you know what? I can't speak highly enough of him, because I'll hold my hands up, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. I wrote the guy off. At one point, I didn't even know he was still at the club, and I just thought, this guy's not got it. But he's shown everybody, no, you know what? I'm good enough to play in this football. And you know what? He's one of our better performers. People all talk about Kyogo and the goals that he scores, and rightly so. He's a cracking signing he's been for. But for me, Ralston is right up there with a contender for Celtic's Player of the Year. As it stands at the minute, we're still at the early doors, but yeah, I mean, and as a result, I'm quite happy.
I don't think
Juranovic over at left back.
I don't think anyone would have any complaints if Ralston continues the way he goes to be Celtic's Player of the Year. I don't think anyone could have any complaints with that, Barry. The way he's progressed.
We spoke about it previously, Paul, when the seasons first began, and he'd started to put a wee run together, 5-6 decent performances. But I think, again, I said myself, well, you know what, credit to the kid, he has done well, but I would like to see Juranovic come in there and Ralston take a back seat. Well, I've changed my mind on it completely. As long as Ralston, because it's not just he's not just keeping consistent, he's actually getting better and better. He really is. He's terrific, and his confidence is growing on the ball. He was maybe a wee bit shaky at the start of the season, even though he was playing, but now he seems very comfortable on the ball, and that's because of the performance he's put in, the consistency and the confidence that he's gained from it. He's been absolutely terrific. Credit to the boy.
You can't disagree with that, Terence, what Barry's saying about Ralston, can you?
No, and in fairness, it's like Barry said when he signed the 1-year contract. If there's a Celtic fan that went great, I'd be surprised. Everyone probably went, "Oh my God, this is the start of it. We have to sign Ralston for another year," and he's rammed it down everyone's throat. And I'm delighted he's rammed it down everyone's throat, mine included. This is a guy now who's starting for Scotland. Start of the season, oh my God, for Celtic, this is a disaster. But Ralston's he's a 7 or 8. He's a 7 or 8 every week. Every week, like he's the most consistent. As Barry said, he's the most consistent. We said ourselves here on the podcast before. Like he's definitely Celtic's player of the season, considering where he's come from so far. He's definitely the Celtic player of the season. As good as Kyogo is and Jota is and all these guys, to think where Ralston has come from, he was written off by everyone. And he, as I said on before, his mental toughness must be unbelievable. To just he can't have been naive or not to have seen what was there and what people had said and this and that. And he's basically just gone, well, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. And he has, and more power to the lad. And I'm delighted for him. And he's proven us all wrong. And as Barry said, you couldn't drop him from the team. He's been absolutely outstanding in all the games he's a 7 and 8 every single week. And he leaves everything on the pitch. Everything on the pitch every time the guy plays. He gets back, defends, he gets up, as you said, he's constantly up, he's constantly crossing, he's putting good balls into the box. So, more power to the lad, and it's great to see.
Terence, there was kind of 2 shaky moments yesterday with Joe Hart with the ball in his feet. And look, we spoke about this when Joe Hart came in. I'm not going to diss Joe Hart there because I think Joe Hart's been exceptionally brilliant since he came in, and I'm a huge fan of Joe Hart since he signed for Celtic. But my heart nearly sunk yesterday with those 2 balls at his feet there yesterday, didn't they?
Well, the first one, you're just going, okay, go on, kick it, go on, kick it. So eventually, Jesus Christ, will you kick it? And then when you meant Michael O'Halloran gets the footing, you're thinking, oh my God, you could. And if you watch that again, if you look at the reaction on Vickers on this, when you see Vickers, he puts his hands in his head. He actually thinks it's nearly gone in, like. And then the one in the 96th minute, oh my God, as well. That was another one between himself and Beaton. But he done something similar in wasn't it the AZ Alkmaar game, where he just waited forever between himself and Welch for the goal that they scored their first goal over there in the Holland. It was something similar, but I don't know why he obviously thinks he's a lot more time than he actually does, but you'd just be worried that eventually, I'm the same as you, Paul. I think he's been fantastic for Celtic since he's been in, but you just worry that eventually your luck's going to run out one of those. Your luck is going to run out one of the days, and you're just going to get caught rotten with something like that. Whatever about the one in the 96th minute, I think that was a mix-up between him and Beta, but I just think when it's back, I think he's looking for the pass. And I think he just needs to go, okay, there's no pass, just drill it. Because Vickers done that a couple of times yesterday under pressure. He just played it down the line, play it down the line for someone to run onto it. But it's real hard.
Do you think, Barry, is that the kind of style that Ange wants to play, that maybe that mistake happened with Joe Hart, that, as Terence was saying there, that he was kind of waiting to look for the pass to pass the ball out, and that's what happened then, that the ball ricocheted off the St. Johnstone player and it went into the net?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it, but it seems to be a part of modern day football, Paul. And it's clear that Ange is saying, I don't want it to go long. This is my philosophy. I want you to pass the ball out from the back. It's still a wee, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of quite a lot of fans, it's a big worry to me at times, and it was proved a couple of times, when teams are pressing you, and we sometimes do take the ball very deep. Carter Vickers will take it, well shot. They'll take it very deep, as in 6 yards from their own goal, and teams will start to press us, and it worries me. But it's clear that that's Ange's message. Listen, when they press you, find the pass, because when it's clear that his philosophy is, if they're pressing and we get through that press, we're then on the attack, and their numbers are gone because they've got 3 and 4 guys trying to press us. It's a bit of modern day football, and again, it's one of these things that the more you practice it, the more you go up in training and you're constantly playing. It's the same players. The more you practice this, the better you become at it. So I'm sure as time goes on, Ange's going to stick to his philosophy. There's no doubt about it. He's not going to say, listen, forget about the passing for the back, just go long. I'm not wanting to take it. He's not going to do that. He's not. It's the same as Guardiola. Guardiola kind of said the same, didn't he? He says, listen, if we lose goals on the back of me wanting to play out for or my keeper to play out for the back, that's on me, because that's what I'm telling him to do. And I think Ange's the same. Ange's saying to the team, listen, Hart will pass out for the back, make angles for him, give him options, because I don't want him to go long. And that's what happened yesterday. He clearly there wasn't an option of a pass, and he delayed it, and Haaland's in there. But listen, luckily, it never ended the goal. Yes, it gives us a couple of heart-stopping moments, and things get thrown at televisions, etc. But that's okay. We're in the final. Forget about it.
I just want to switch it back there, just on the goalkeepers there, to the Celtic news that the young lad Toby from the Colts team has been training with the Celtic first, and he was on the bench in Europe there a couple of weeks back, and I was reading up about him, and he models himself on Edison in Man City. All right, his footwork after training, the young lad said that he practices football drills like the outfield players running through the cones with the ball and stuff like that. Like, that's what the modern goalkeepers seem to be doing now, Barry, don't they? They seem to be kind of concentrating their footwork as well. And what I'm reading about this lad is like, this lad could come through the ranks to be Celtic number one. That I'm hearing he's actually so good, like
with something like that.
You know, I'm hearing he's very impressed with Ange. Stevie Woods now is going to be working with him.
I think Joe Hart between him and Beta, but I just think
mentor
with his back.
So I think he's looking for this is the experience of having Joe Hart.
I think he just needs to go, okay, there's no pass, just drill it. Because Vickers done that a couple of times yesterday under pressure. He just played it down the line.
If we look back to the last couple of seasons,
for someone to run into, but just
no goalkeeper is going to be lauding off them. Barry, is that the kind they were making and stuff like that? Like, it's good to went into this.
I don't think
for me,
there's any doubt about it.
It would be a role model.
Modern football. It's clear that Ange is saying, I don't want it to go long. This is my philosophy. I want you to pass the ball out from the back. I mean, the modern day goalkeeper has done quite a lot to. It's a big worry to stop the ball in the back of the net. Those days are gone. Teams are pressing you, and we sometimes do take the ball better.
I think Edison is the real kind of role model of modern football.
And teams will start to press us, and it worries me. But it's clear that that's Ange's message. Listen, when they press you, find the pass, because Guardiola got rid of Hart. It's clear that his philosophy is feel that he was good enough. We get through that press, and we're then on the Joe Hart because he's improved that. Okay, well, he is going to make a couple of mistakes. We can forgive him that. That's going to happen when you try and play.
It's part of football, Barry, as well, isn't it? That keeper make a mistake here and there. Do you know what I mean?
But what you're saying is spot on, and Stevie Woods have got one of the best in the game, one of the best coaches in the game. He's renowned for being one of the top goalkeeping coaches, but also what you say is true as well. Joe Hart, at one point a world-class goalkeeper, we've spoken about it before. He's played at the highest level for a number of years, English Premiership, for his, I think, 80-odd caps for his country. He's played at major tournaments, he's played Champions League, So to have him there, why wouldn't a young goalkeeper want to experience that? I think I'm right in saying, Paul, that this keeper that you speak about, he's been linked with the Premier League as well, isn't he?
He is, yeah. Man City themselves are wanting him.
Yeah, I think Brighton as well.
Brighton are looking at him.
Move to Brighton. So hopefully it's one that we can, he buys into Ange's vision. And like you say, the fact that he's working with top class coaches and goalkeepers just now, and we're keeping because we don't. Again, we've spoken. We don't want to lose our top young talent to the English Premiership or to overseas countries. But yeah, I mean, hopefully his progress will continue. But he's in the right place for me.
Because that's you said there, Barry, that he's in the right place, and I think that's the best thing about Ange, that Ange actually sees potential and bring them in and around the squad now, getting them used to the squad now, let him work with the first team goalkeepers under Joe Hart and Stevie Woods. That might maybe convince Toby that his actually career's here at Celtic to come Celtic number one in the future, that he doesn't need to go like abroad to get first team football anymore, like we've seen in the past, the amount of Celtic youngsters leaving. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. But James Forrest doing what James Forrest does for Celtic. I think James Forrest, I saw a read yesterday, like James Forrest knows what it is to be Celtic. He's a Celtic man true and true. He's been here all his career. He's never left the club, or he's a true Celtic man. And how many times have James Forrest come in and beat games and scored big goals for Celtic?
Yeah, and he seems to have a knack, especially in the League Cup. Like, sorry, someone coming in. Mark, is it?
Yeah, perfect.
That's better, Mark. That's better. Yeah. Aye, that's much.
That's better, Mark. Yeah.
That's much better. Yeah. Yeah.
Just remember now what you clicked, right? Jesus. So, like, Mark, I was just saying to Terence there, James Forrest does what James Forrest does. He's a Celtic man true and true, Mark, and he gets what Celtic's about. And how many times has he come into to save? Oh, Terence, sorry, colleagues. Terence, who finished there? So,
no worries. No, but like he has a great record in the League Cup, in particular, James Forrest. And it's like you said, Paul. He's come through the ranks. He knows what it means to be at Celtic. He knows what it means to win trophies. He knows what it means to get to cup finals, and he knows what it means to the fans. And you could see yesterday. I mean, when he came on, he really looked hungry. He looked like a guy who'd been out for a long time and was really out to give it a go, and delighted to be back in the Hoops jersey. And in fairness, it shows an experienced player. He was in the right place at the right time when the ball fell, and he finished it. And thank God. And look, I mean, James Forrest is one of those guys that sometimes he's brilliant and sometimes he's not so brilliant, and he gets pelters left, right, and centre from on the forums and stuff. Sometimes he drifts out of games, sometimes he drifts into games. But certainly for the 18-20 minutes he was on there yesterday or longer, he looked hungry. He looked very direct with the ball, and as I said, he was in the right place at the right time, and the ball just fell perfectly to him, and it was a great finish. And it was great to see. It must be great relief for him to be able to be back on the pitch and scoring as well.
So like 423 games, shots he had 326, assists he has 105, and he's 95 goals. He's 5 short off 100, Barry. Are they impressive stats, Barry, for a right winger, or do you think James Forrest should have more goals? Or
no, I would say it's quite impressive.
Impressive. That's what I was looking at. Like for a right winger, like to be 5 goals off the 100 mark for one club, like you normally kind of hear of a centre forward getting the 100 goals, or not kind of your right midfielder. And what Terence was saying there, like that thing about Forrest was that he was kind of gets a lot of stick, but he's a Celtic man, Barry. Like he's never moved from the club. He's stuck with the club. Yeah,
I think something. I think James Forrest has grown with each season that's passed. He's got better and better, because I think in the early part of his career there was a lot of inconsistencies and there was a lot of injury, and he got that tag, didn't he? The injury-prone tag. But but there's no doubt about it. He's a big game player, James Forrest. When it comes to the big occasions, or when Celtic are in need of a goal, he's the one that steps up. And it was no coincidence yesterday that he got the winner. He takes up fantastic positions. He's not there by luck.
No, that's what tells us it's experience, Barry, isn't this? Yeah.
He's got a knack of knowing where he should be when the ball's on the opposite side, and there he was, almost on the 6-yard box, sniffing out that goal, sniffing out the winner. He's terrific at it. He really is. He gives us something different. I really like Abada, but I think they're slightly different players, if I'm honest. I think James Forrest is a bit more direct in terms of once he receives the ball, he'll square up the fullback and he'll go at them. I think Abada's more, he likes to do his running off the ball, but they're both effective in their own way. But it's great to have him back. And like I say, he's going to be a big player for us now, a really important player for us this season, in my opinion. And if we're wanting to deliver trophies, it's important that James Forrest is in and around and fit and in the team and in the squad.
Mm-hmm. Abada seems to be kind of off form lately, Barry, don't he? Since he kind of came back from that injury, he hasn't kind of been himself the last couple of weeks. And we were doing a few podcasts there, and we were saying that a lot of our play now comes down the left-hand side rather than the right. Is it good maybe that James Forrest is back and maybe put this bit of pressure on Abada, and vice versa, Abada putting pressure on James Forrest?
Absolutely, because look what happened at James Forrest when Paddy Roberts came in. Paddy Roberts was a sensation, and that made James Forrest lift his game. But I mean, with regards to Abada, I mean, I think we need to remember he's just came to
19,
the club, and he's just, I think he's just turned 20, Paul. So he's still a young player. But the early part of the season, he was terrific, and he still is. Like I say, there is a bit of inconsistency there. There's no doubt about it. And he does go off the boil, but you're going to expect that of young players. These young guys will not be able to perform every single week. But credit to him, because there has been times in he's had come in for a bit of criticism when he's put in some below par performances. But the next game he's come back and he's delivered, especially in Europe. Ferencváros, the goal for the cross for Kyogo. So he still is delivering. He's not shying away from anything. And like I say, for me, he's a different option to Forrest. He likes to do a lot of running in behind, which is a great option to have, where Forrest, he's more sort of into feet and he'll take the ball and go at players. But, I'll agree with you, it's going to do no harm at all to the team to have them both vying for that sort of slot on the right-hand side, because they'll both have to be at the top of their game if they want to take that position.
Just before we come to your player ratings and we'll move on to the Celtic AGM, since Ange came in, compared to last season, we have 14% more passes, we've 9% more possession, we've 39 more chances on goal created, we've 27 less goals conceded, 15% more entries into the opponent's box. We've 10% more attackers attacking down the defenders in their box. We spend 2 seconds less on the ball per player, and the opponents get 3 seconds less on the ball than we did last season. So, Terence, you can see how much time Ange wants the players on the ball. He doesn't want them dwelling on the ball or holding on to the ball. He wants the ball quick moving, and we can see players moving into the box more than. I know I gave criticism that Rogic and Turnbull don't get into the box, but yesterday Turnbull seemed to be getting into the box a bit more as well himself.
Yeah, but it is, you said, Paul. It's the speed that Ange wants to play it. All you have to look at it is even something like, as soon as the ball goes out for a goal kick, Joe Hart another ball is in within a second and he's off. It's gone. It's up the pitch like a bullet. So it's all high intensity. It's all as like that video we all saw at the start of the season where he was like, we never stop, we keep going. And that's the way they want to play. And when Celtic play at that high intensity, most of the teams won't be able to live with them. They won't be able to live with them with Celtic, with the high intensity, high pass and the high press. Like the likes of Kyogo, he never stops running. He's pressing from the front. He's defending from the front. It makes a massive difference when you've got guys that are willing to burst the gut to chase down balls that might be, some guys might think it's an aimless ball. They're chasing down defenders. They're not giving anyone any time on the ball, and it's brilliant to see. Like, and, I mean, that's Ange just instilled that into the players.
Like that's the one stat by that interested me yesterday when I was doing up the notes was the opponents have 3 seconds less on the ball than that we can see the way Ange wants to play. Like, we're defending from the top, and you can see that working, you know, by the stats and by watching Celtic, as Terence said there, the movement of Kyogo trying to tack him down. They're really buying into Ange's system, aren't they?
Definitely. And you know something as well, obviously, for me, the percentage of possession stats are incredible. You know, like I said earlier on, 85% against Livingston. You know, that kind of levels are unheard of. But as a result, if you've got 85% and you're limiting the opposition to 15%, that's naturally going to mean that, you know, you're not going to concede chances, or you're going to concede very few chances. And I think that's a thing with Ange. Clearly, as a possession-based manager, you know, and this is a thing, but it's going to click. You know, we are going to get better because, like we've all said, you know, once that tempo's high, and you know the passing's slicker and the movement's a lot better, there's nobody in the league that can live with us. It's plain and simple. But like I say, we're still a work in progress under Ange. We're still not at the levels that I think he'll want and expect. We're still a work in progress. But like I say, the thing is just now consistency, and it's delivering these performances and getting the results. And like I say, with a consistent team in place and buying into Ange's philosophies, we're going to get better and better. And I think, you know, in the coming weeks and months, the team are only going to get better.
Mm-hmm. Terence, I come to you first for your player ratings and just go through with us.
Yeah, I give Joe Hart a 6. He didn't have much. He scared the bejesus out of me twice, so that's the only reason he got a 6. I thought Ralston had a very good game. He had 7. I thought Vickers 7. I thought he was class yesterday. I give him 8. I thought Welch was steady enough until he got a horrific challenge, which was 7. I thought McGregor as normal, always very productive. I give him 7. I didn't think Turnbull was great myself yesterday personally, but I don't know. I think he kind of struggled a little bit again, but that's just me. I give him a 6. I thought Abada was quiet, but he didn't get an awful lot of ball, to be fair. So he tries. He keeps going, but I thought he was very quiet, so I give him a 5. I thought Jota was outstanding. I give him a 9. I thought Beaton in the last 4 or 5 games that he's played in the defensive midfield role has been absolutely exceptional, and I think he's helped McGregor to go forward. I thought he was excellent. I give him an 8. Kyogo didn't get much ball, to be fair. Was quiet enough. I give him a 7. And then obviously Jamesy Forrest, he came on. He did what he had to do, and he scored the goal. I gave him an 8 for scoring the goal. Ayeti obviously didn't do too much. He gave him a 4. Mikey Johnson, Saro, they both came on, did little bits. They did. I give them 5 each. I have to say, I thought when James McCarthy came on, he really, really looked good in that. When obviously Beaton had to go back, when he had to sit and roll, I thought he really looked good, and you could see the quality of McCarthy. And there was a couple of passes. I know he did one bad pass, the back pass, without looking, but generally I thought he was really, really solid, and he moved the ball really well in defence and broke up play as well, I thought, on a couple of occasions. So I gave him a 7.
On the Stephen Welch elbow and stuff, I haven't forgot about that. I have it down on the when we talk about the Celtic AGM, because it all kind of leaks into that when they talked about the referees. So I'll speak to that more about in the Celtic AGM. Barry, I come to yourself there about your ratings, bud.
Yeah, mine's are relatively similar to Terence's there. I gave Joe Hart a 6. I think, you know, he did what he's been doing regularly. You know, he didn't have too much to do in the game, but what he did pretty well. His distribution was good. Those couple of scary moments that stopped him getting a 7 for me, but so I gave him a 6. I gave Ralston a 7. I thought he didn't really put a foot wrong. He was constantly available to take passes. You know, his distribution again was good. He got up and down the flank again, Mr. Consistency. Juranovic, I agreed with Terence. I think he's a right good player. I really do. I gave him an 8. People might say, well, I don't think he did too much, but I just think he's a calming influence in that defence. He's very, very comfortable on the ball. Obviously, he's a Croatian international, so you'd expect him to be. So yeah, he got an 8 for me. I gave Cameron Vickers and Welsh both 7s. Again, I thought they did the job they were there to do. McGregor, I gave a 7 as well. I thought, again, he's kind of Mr. Consistency. Beaton, I gave a 7, but I'll echo what Terence said, and I never thought I'd really say this about Beaton, but I think the last 3 or 4 games he has been very good in the centre of the park. And you know yourself, Paul, I've been calling for Beaton to get out of the club for a long time, and I still don't want him back at centre back. I need to hold my hands up and say I don't like him in there, but I can't take away the fact that the guy has been very good in the centre of the park. He's done really well in there, so credit to him for that. Abada I thought was quiet. I gave Abada a 6. I get Turnbull as well. I don't think his influence was great yesterday. I don't think he did too much in terms of creativity. I gave him a 6. Jota, he was my man of the match along with Terence. I gave him a 9. I thought his, everything that he did yesterday was positive. He set up the goal, and I just thought he was a constant threat to them. Kyogo, I gave him a 6. I thought it was a difficult game for him. He was up against 3 big centre halves that didn't give him much room to sat in, so it was always going to be a tough game for him. But he tried to get himself involved, but didn't have too much an influence. James Forrest, I gave an 8 to because he came up with the winner. I didn't really mark the other ones.
That's right.
Because, it was late in the game. But you know what? I'm glad Terence mentioned McCarthy because, as you guys know, I'm a bit of a McCarthy fanboy, and he's not had the greatest start, but I did think he was very good when he came on. But good at what Terence mentioned. He was good at breaking up the play. You've seen him closing down space, putting in little tackles. When they were on the break, he was the one that was pressing. And I think right on the final whistle, there was a ball broke to the edge of the box. They were pushing, and he put in a cracking sliding tackle. And as soon as he did, the referee blew the whistle. But that's the James McCarthy that I'm looking to see at Celtic. And hopefully that cameo role he did, where I thought he was very good, that'll do his confidence the world of good, and we'll see the James McCarthy that we all expect to see.
I think that's what he needs to do with James McCarthy at the moment, Barry, because since he's came, he's had COVID, he has no pre-season and stuff like that, and if Ange feels the game is run and he needs to kind of put a defensive midfielder in there, like, bring on James McCarthy, let him get this match fitness up, and these little moments coming onto the pitch will only get his fitness back up to a level that we can see him in the starting lineup then,
Definitely, and I think he did look fitter. I know I don't know how long he played. It wouldn't have been too long, maybe 10 minutes or so. I'm not even sure how much he played, but he did look like his mobility was better. I mean, I was at the game, the European game against Leverkusen, and I seen him a couple of times. He looked like he only came on as a substitute, but he looked like he was struggling to get back and chase. And they were a very good team, Leverkusen, obviously. But yesterday seemed like his mobility was a lot better. He was able to close down space a lot quicker. So again, that tells me his fitness levels improved. But like you said, Paul, he's had COVID, and COVID knocks the stuffing out of you, as a lot of people will be able to testify to. So he's not had an easy start to his Celtic career, but like I say, hopefully now we'll see him kicking on, because he is a terrific player.
Moving on, of course, we know who we're playing in the final. We're playing Hibs after they beat Rangers 3-1 today. Our neighbours, Barry, seem to be a bit of in turmoil at the moment, with Steven Gerrard leaving and Van Bronckhorst coming in, and again losing out in a semi-final of a cup again. Doesn't seem to be going well at the moment on the opposite side of Glasgow.
And long may that continue.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, something, I didn't see the match. I wasn't. I don't watch too much of them, to be perfectly honest. Obviously,
I refuse to watch them. I refuse to watch them.
Yeah, I mean, I was aware because a lot of my mates didn't let me not know that they were 3-0 down. So yeah, I mean, you know what? Long may their struggles continue. What we're finding now is where they were before COVID. When the pressure was on, and in front of their fans and what have you, that they really struggled. Well, there was a big game today, a semi-final for them, and they've crumbled. And I hope they continue to do that.
Mm-hmm. So On Wednesday, the 17th of November, Celtic had their AGM meeting. In attendance for Celtic was Chairman Ian Banker, Acting CEO Michael Nicholson, Finance Director Chris McCoy, Celtic Foundation Chief Executive Tony Hamilton, First Team Manager Ange Postecoglou, Women's First Team Manager Flan Alonso, Brian Wilson was there. Dermot Desmond wasn't in attendance again for the second time running, but was represented by his son Ross. Terence, I spoke to you on Discount about this, and for the second year running, Dermot Desmond has decided to send his son Ross. Ross is only 38 at the moment. Can you see maybe Ross stepping into this role? Is he being groomed into this role by Dermot Desmond, you think, and he'll eventually take the reins at Celtic?
It's hard to say, Paul, but like if Dermot Desmond doesn't feel like he needs to be at these meetings and doesn't feel like he needs to have a major input into these, like it's an AGM, it's once a year. It's not, you're not asking him to come every week. Like, I mean, if he's grooming his son for this position, then just have his son in this position. Just do it now. There's like, it's a bit embarrassing that the major shareholder isn't at the AGM for a second year in a row. Like, it's coming from Ireland. Like, you know what I mean? He's got his own price over there in half an hour or whatever it is. If he wants his son to be the main person for him in Celtic, fine. But have his son at Celtic. Do you know, I think it's very poor form that he didn't show up. I understand his son is apparently a massive Celtic fan, diehard Celtic fan, but like Dermot Desmond is the guy who's going to call the shots. With the greatest respect, like if there's a major decision to be made tomorrow, he's not going to give his son the reins to make that decision. He's going to make that decision. Well, like if it was his decision to, as we all heard, to get rid of Don McCoy, he wasn't impressed with him. It wasn't Ross. It wasn't his son who made that decision. So, like, if he's going to make these decisions that are the major decisions in the club, turn up to the AGM, or else give your son the entire running of it. Don't have bit parts and go, I'll send you for that because I can't be bothered. I'll deal with that part. You go over and deal with that part. That's only my opinion on it. I just think it's poor form. Either fully involved or let your son run it for you. But this idea, he's picking and choosing when he wants to do things, I don't agree with that at all. Regardless of him being a major shareholder, the main shareholder or not, I just don't agree with that. That's only my opinion. It's an AGM, it's a year, he's only to turn up for.
Barry, do you want to come in that?
You know, something I can't disagree with anything Terence says. I think I'm really disappointed that he's not there. I mean, how many times has JFP been on here and sort of not questioned, but posed the question: Is Desmond's heart in it? Is he still up for this fight? Is he still interested? Well, not turning up to your second AGM, it might tell its own story, because, like Terence said, it's a once a year thing. You know, to take one day out your calendar to come and attend, as you, the majority shareholder, to come and attend a meeting, because there is, you know, these are crucial moments just now for the board, because as we know, the disconnect between the board and the fans, and they're under real pressure. There's a real fractured relationship there just now between the board and the fans. So I think this was a perfect opportunity for him to come and answer the questions or put reassurances in place, and he wasn't there, and that for me is a disappointment. You know, Paul, I've made my feelings clear on the board.
Oh yeah. That's why I kind of wanted yourself to come onto this pod as well tonight, because I know how critical you've been of the board, Barry, and like this is all this AGM is about board members and what they're doing for the club, and when I was out walking Wednesday, and Mark was kind of sending me clips of the AGM through Skype, and I was picking them up during the day. And when I saw that Desmond hasn't turned up again, and I was echoing what you were saying there, Barry, about JFP coming on here. You know, is his heart in it? You know, is his heart in Celtic? And for me, like, and going what you're saying there, like, if he's not turning up to these things once a year, like, he doesn't have to talk, doesn't have to say anything, just be present, let Bank here, let the board members do the talking, just show your face to the Celtic fans that you are there, you're at the club, you are interested in what's going on. It's kind of another kind of, by Dermot Desmond, kind of a two fingers up to the Celtic fans again, Barry, isn't it?
Yeah, well, like I say, Paul, I'm just really disappointed, and it just puts more question marks over the exact question that the GFP. Does the guy want to still be here? Is he looking for a way out? We don't know. He certainly never indicated that he's no longer. But sometimes actions speak louder than words, and his sort of lack of presence at these meetings, because it's a big deal. The AGM, like, once a year. And especially this one of all AGMs, when the last 9 have all been trophy laden ones, where it would have been a lot easier, and I don't know how many he's attended out of those last 9, but things are rosy, everything in the garden's rosy. Whereas last season, when things started to go pear-shaped for Celtic, and this season when the end product was no trophies, and like I say, a real disconnect with the supporters. A lot of supporters not happy with the way things are being run, and the complete disregard. They class the disregard towards them, and the lack of communication that they've had with the football club as a whole. Now was a perfect time for him to come and field questions. You said that he doesn't have to talk. Well, yeah, he does for me. He does have to talk. If people want questions answered, he's the man at the helm. I know he employs a lot of people to do his day-to-day work, but there's no doubt about it, he'll know what's going on at the club. So, yeah, for me, a massive disappointment that he wasn't there, and a huge question mark over what the future holds in terms of his tenure at the club. Is he going to be here much longer? Is it is his son going to take the reins? We don't know what if his son's interested in becoming the majority shareholder, or is it going to be a completely new person or consortium or what have you at the club. But there's no questions really answered for me at the AGM last week.
Ian Banker addressed the room. Yeah, Terence.
Sorry, just one thing there. Sorry to interrupt you. It's like what Barry's saying there. If Dermot Desmond doesn't want to be the main man anymore, I certainly wouldn't have any issue if he was at the AGM and he said, I'm passing the responsibility and all my whatever powers. My son is now going to be in that position. He's now going to be making the decisions. I wouldn't have an issue with that if he wants to do that. But it's the way it's been done.
It's a secretive thing, is there something like that, kind of closed doors or something like that, Terence, isn't it? It's a no need to know business or something like that, isn't it?
But it's like what Barry is just saying there. I mean, it's after what happened last season. I mean, this season he's the man who apparently has got rid of Don McKay. So there was a million and one reasons why he should have been at this AGM to at least explain. This is the reasons X, Y, and Z. Look, going forward, my son Ross is going to be in my position. He's going to be making the calls. He's going to be with the board and blah blah blah, and lay it out there for everyone. And then, if in 12 months' time it's Ross is at our AGM again, people will understand why he's at it. At the minute, everyone is just going, he's just sending his son. He can't be arsed. Turning up. Do you know? And there need, and it's unfortunately it's the Celtic board through and through. It's basically like nearly two fingers up to the fans. They're not giving them any clear information. Everyone's just guessing he's just coming over because he can't be bothered. That's all it is. Whereas if he came out and just said, I'm stepping back from it, I'm still going to be the majority shareholder. My son is going to be taking my place here. He's going to be the one making the decisions with the board and with Michael Nichols and with Ian Banker or whoever it may be. At least people will know. At the minute, it's a guessing game. And when the major shareholder doesn't turn up to an AGM, like I'm sure on all the companies he owns, and I'm sure he owns a hell of a lot of companies, and there aren't too many AGMs he doesn't turn up to, I imagine. You know? So I just think he needs, as Michael or as Barry said there needs to be some clarity on it. If he wants to to be there going forward. He needs to be there. If not, in my opinion, if you want to give it to his son, that's fine. But it needs to be laid out for the Celtic fans to know what's going on, because it's not good enough if the major shareholders. It's not good enough.
Ian Banker addressed the room and revealed that Peter Lord was pivotal in identifying and appointing Ange Postecoglou as Celtic manager. But I just want to come to you first on this. When Ange came in, Barry, then CEO Dominic McKay said Ange was 100% his man. 100% his man. That he spent time in Japan and time in Australia, and he saw Ange, he knew all about Ange and thing. I want to get two of your opinions on this, and I'm going to twist it back to kind of reports have come out since Dominic McKay was there, and I'm going to kind of put a twist in it why I think Peter Lord might have had an influence in getting Ange. Do you think, Barry, that there was any thing that maybe Peter Lord was the one that got Ange?
Well, obviously not doubting what you're saying, but did Dominic McKay actually say that he was his appointment? Because
100%, yeah.
I know that, I watched his interview when he was first revealed to the press and to the fans. And I remember McKay saying, obviously, he was very well aware of Ange having spent time in Japan, and he was, involved in the talks and the communications and got that. But also at the same time, I do remember Peter Lawwell saying that Ange was on the radar of Celtic for a long time. They'd been very well aware of who he was. So it's a difficult one, because I would like to think that it potentially wasn't Dom McKay's appointment, for the simple reason that Dom McKay came into the club, I don't know when, I can't remember which month it was he came into the club, it was around about the summertime. So for Celtic to have not identified Ange at that point, when we hadn't had a manager since February, is a very worrying thing. Now listen, I know the whole Eddie Howe situation, but this is football. Things like that happen in football. So you need to have a plan A, B, C, D, E. You need to have all these plans in place. So if Eddie Howe wasn't going to be the manager, which Celtic had hoped it was going to be the case, then I would hate to have thought that Dominic McKay was, introduced the plan B to the board, if you like. So it's a tricky one, because whilst there's no doubt in my mind that Dominic McKay was heavily involved in the discussions with Ange, and it was great that he had a knowledge of who Ange Postecoglou was, I'd like to think that maybe the club, like Peter Lawwell had said, were aware of Ange and his achievements and his abilities as a coach before Dominic McKay was involved at the club. So that's kind of where I sit on it. Yeah. I'm unsure as to who exactly appointed him, but I wouldn't like to think it was Dominic McKay, because that tells me that, again, going back to the board, which I have done in the past, they didn't have a plan B if Eddie Howe didn't work out.
So I was thinking, because of all these kind of rumours that came out over Dominic McKay, that he wasn't up for the job and stuff like that. A couple of months back, myself and Mark were talking, and a deal was practically done with Fogle Harkin to come in as director of football. This deal that we're left to believe was practically done between Dermot Desmond and Peter Lord. And Dominic McKay supposedly got involved. And Fogle Harkin walked away. Didn't like the way Dom had plans for the club. Didn't like his vision for the club. Hence, McCann called all contract negotiations off. Now, but I was thinking, because of the connection between Man City and Yokohama, was Ange maybe brought to the attention then by Celtic under Fogle Harkin? That would that have been an option for a team, Barry? Do you get me?
Could very well have been, because Fergal Harkin will be very well aware. Like you say, as part of that group, there's no doubt about Fergal Harkin will know. But obviously, there's clearly again a disengagement between all parties, because Dominic McKay, for him to come in, be identified as the man that the club believed was the correct guy to come as chief executive. And then for him to resign literally months into the job, something has gone far wrong somewhere. And it's something we might never know. exactly what happened, whether it was the club weren't happy with Mackay. We're led to believe that the club weren't happy with his vision, or whether, I don't know if Mackay felt undermined in a lot of situations. We just don't know. But what we do know is that it's never really been rectified. I know Michael Nicholson's in there just now, but is he going to be the guy who takes the reins, or is he there on a temporary basis? For me, I would ask the question, if he is there taking the job on a permanent basis, why wasn't he? I mean, he's been at the club, I think, 8 or 9 years. Why
come up and make a statement or something, Barry?
Well, I'm more thinking, Paul, why wasn't he considered in the first place? I know Ange speaks very highly of this guy. He says he's very good at his job, but I'm not going to doubt what Ange says, but he's not going to turn around and say, nah, this guy's not the best, to be honest, is he? So we just don't know. I mean, like I say, for me, if Michael Nicholson gets a job on a permanent basis, why wasn't he considered?
There is there's questions there. There's questions there. Then, like you're saying, why wasn't he considered first time round? You know what I mean? Promoting house is kind of what companies try to do in these positions. You know what I mean? Like they bring in an outsider. Was Nicholson overlooked then? Then they turn to Nicholson. There's some serious questions.
And for me, Paul, he's been at the club. Again, people know my opinions on the board. Maybe we need some fresh blood, and I don't think there's any doubt about it. I need some fresh blood, some fresh ideas. The Dominic Mackay's ideas not fit in with the sort of board's agenda or Dermot Desmond's agenda. The way they run things. He might have come in and thought, well, you know what, I feel we can take the club forward this way, this way, this way. And they're like, well, no, that's not the way we do things. But I'll tell you what, Michael Nicholson, he's been here 8 years. He knows the way we operate, so we'll put him in there instead. That's maybe just my mind going the way it wants to go, but we just don't know.
Terence, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, just on the Michael Nichols one with the Dom Mackay one, the only reason I would have thought that they would have gone for the Dom Mackay as opposed to Nichols is with Mackay, he had such a prolific marketing background, I think.
And you know, man, with Dominic Mackay through the rugby, and yourself, Terence, you're a big fan of rugby yourself. You know of Dominic,
And he had a great kind of marketing and commercial side of things with the Scottish Rugby Union, and he really lit that place up, and he completely transformed it. Whereas I know Michael Nichols, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's more in the legal background. If I'm not mistaken, I think he's more towards the solicitor, lawyer.
Company solicitor, yeah. He was the company solicitor, yeah.
So I'm only just, again, it's pure speculation that maybe the club would be looking for more of trying to like enhance their own image and marketing and develop getting in more, obviously, cash flow and trying to source different markets. Whereas I would imagine, obviously, that Michael Nichols man isn't in that field. He's way more obviously just the legal side of things. And I think I wouldn't even think he was considered for a job. I think he's just a case when Dom Mackay is gone, they've kind of gone, okay, Michael, will you step in here for the next amount of months? I mean, the guy has probably only spoken in the AGM. He hasn't spoken outside that. Whereas you had Don Mackay, he was doing fan support. He was always out there. He was always open for interviews. He always looked very comfortable.
Do you think, though, Terence, like, because we saw how disconnected this board is with the Celtic fans, that the likes of Ian Barker, Brian Wilson and all them and Peter Law, they didn't like that Dominic Mackay was so out there with the Celtic fans, that they didn't like that. They wanted to keep things in-house, and they didn't like the way Dominic Mackay was going about stuff.
It could have very well been the case, Paul. It could very well been the case because, I mean, he was in the job 72 days. They rushed him. They rushed him to get him in even early. Like I think he started in July. I think it was July. He wasn't supposed to take up the role till I think the 1st of August when Peter Lawwell had left. So they rushed him to get him in to, like, he was nearly in the job. Like, as he was nearly in the job waiting for Peter Lawwell to leave as long as he was in the job when Peter Lawwell left. Like, so I mean, he was there. So there must have been, he must have obviously ruffled guys' feathers and done stuff that, as you said, the old guard, the board that are there for so long, people are on it so long, we do it this way, and he goes, no, I'm going to do it this way, I'm going to do it that way. like the club went from not telling fans anything last 12 months ago under Lennon and all that to basically one of the first things Don McCoy was doing was having fan forum meeting, and he was meeting with the fans and with Postecoglou, and they were taking questions and they were interacting with fans. That was something that just wasn't happening, and it could be something like that, Paul. It could be something like maybe he was being too open to the fans, and maybe the likes of Lowell and Banky and these guys were like, no, we don't do it that way, and he was like, well, I do it that way. I thought, well, that's not going to happen. I don't know. Again, it's a strange one, because to go from a fella that they wanted so desperately to get rid of him after 72 days, it's something major. As we discussed it before on here, something really, really strange that has happened.
Celtic manager Ange then spoke. He said that we will have continued growth and improvement within the first team. We have added a lot of new players into the first team squad. We plan to add more new faces in the upcoming January transfer window to plug these gaps that have been left in the squad. He said that there has been improvement within the first team in likes of fitness in the sports science department, and he's looking to fill more roles within the squad, but he's not looking for a quick fix. Ange wants to look at more the long-term future of the club. But I think the main question about Ange and the thing, and we spoke with a lot with yourself when Ange came Celtic manager, is his backroom staff. We know he brought in the sports science, the department from Spurs and stuff like that. But for me, I think director of football role is a backburner for Celtic. I don't think they're going to run with that anytime soon. What's your thoughts on this there, and saying he's filling the gaps within the squad and his first team coaches?
Yes, so they'd mentioned at the AGM, Nicholson and both Ange, that, the worded it cleverly, it's the football operations department. We're looking at the thing as a whole. So with regards to director of football, I don't think they're going to go there.
No.
With the director of football. And I listened to Ange's press conference, I think it was Friday, and one of the reporters that questioned him had suggested that, during the AGM, Michael Nicholson mentioned that you are looking to appoint a director of football. Are you involved in that? And Ange turned around and says, well, no, he never said that. He says unless I was at a different AGM, he never says we're looking to appoint a director of football. So I'm kind of the opinion of you guys that I don't think they will now appoint a director of football, which for me I can't understand, because I think if they were, they should have appointed a director of football maybe 12 months ago. Maybe not at the start of the year. That he should have been one of the first people in place. You know what, Paul? See, with regards to behind the scenes, I just don't know where we're at.
No.
Because when we spoke about, you're probably going back at the start of the year, around about sort of January, February time, when when Neil Lennon was coming to the end of his managerial tenure, we spoke about the process. And, I think Brendan Rodgers had mentioned Celtic are such a big institution that they need a director of football in place. So I think we were all kind of the consensus that, the Celtic will appoint a chief executive, then a director of football, and then together, along with Desmond, will then appoint a coach, a manager. And that never happened. And here we are now, mid-November. We've still not got the football operations side in place. We've got a manager and he doesn't have his own backroom staff. Is he going to appoint them? I don't know. I don't know if he's going to run with Kennedy and Strachan and McManus and Woods. It might be that he runs with these guys. We've not got a chief executive. Not a chief executive. Oh yeah, we don't. We've got an acting chief executive. Mm-hmm. We don't have a director of football. As far as I'm aware, unless I've missed something, I don't think we'll have a head of recruitment either.
No, we don't.
I don't think we do. So we're still a lot of work to do. And that side of things, what direction they're going to go in, I simply do not know, because they've never made it clear. This is the way we plan to take the club forward. Are they waiting to appoint a proper or a full-time chief executive as opposed to Michael Nicholson? Is Desmond coming to the end of his tenure at the the club and we don't know it, and that's why things are being held up. Like I say, I think the AGM, amongst other things, it's just left more questions than answers, to be honest, Paul, because, like I say, we're now in November and probably we're in the same place we were a year ago, except we'll have a different manager at the helm and a different team on the park. But in terms of football operations, as the club like to call it, we're still no further forward.
So I was looking there, just going what you were saying there, Barry, about the director of football, and I was looking at clubs that have a director of football, and I was looking at their manager's role, and every club that has a director of football, their manager is called first team coach, all right, first team coach, all right, and Ange's title at Celtic is first team is manager, first team manager. So that's why I'm kind of swaying to the way that Celtic aren't going to appoint in a director of football, because if you look at the Ferguson era, he was manager. If you look at Arsene Wenger, he was manager. Now when Arteta came in, they have a director of football. He's called first team coach. You know, do you think maybe that is that a kind of maybe a hint that we aren't going to go for a director of football because the manager's there and he's going to run the football side of things? And
well, I would say the biggest hint, Paul, is there's not been one appointed.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest hint for me. Is like I say, that this kind of was proposed maybe about 9, 10, 11 months ago, that, you know, the football side of things was going to go through a massive overhaul. You talked, not wanting to go back, we talked about Dominic Mackay. He was brought in to revolutionise the club and bring them into modern day. That was his thing, you know, modernise the club, and that's never happened. You know, modern day football, all your big clubs have directors of football, people that run the club and allow the manager to get on the coaching, get on the field and coach the football team. Don't get me wrong, the manager does have input when it comes to things like recruitment and things like that. He does have a say, you know, because he'll look for a certain type of player that he wants to identify. But then the director of football, along with your, head of scouting network, they then identify these players and have meetings. But I would say, like, going back to your question, the biggest hint for me that they're not going to appoint a director of football is that there's not one in place. And they've had about 10 or 11 months to get one in place. So for me, it's a mistake for me. For me, we should have a director of football. And when you've got someone like Brendan Rodgers saying the size of the club, he's been in the club. You know, he's managed the football club. He knows the size of the club. He knows the way it operates. He's turned around, and whether people like him or not, he's turned around and says the size of football club that Celtic are, they need a director of football in place. And, you know, I'd tend to listen to what he's got to say, because, like I say, for as much as maybe people don't like him, you can't deny that he's a good manager and what he's achieved, etc. But I think it's a mistake in not appointing a director of football. That's my opinion.
Terence, we spoke to you a lot as well about this role, and we spoke a lot about Ange bringing in his staff, and as Barry said, they were clever in the way they put out football operations. You know, we don't know what football operations means within Celtic. You know, it is kind of concerning that if they want to modernise the club, like, we don't have these people. We don't have no head of recruitment. We don't have no director of football. You know, it's really kind of a shambles in this department at the club, isn't there?
It is, and but I'd have to agree with what Barry was saying there. I can't see them appointing a director of football, because I think they probably had, as you both said, they probably had Fergal Harkins from reports nearly a done deal to come in and do that. There was report before that it was talks that Eddie Howe was bringing in the guy
Richard Hughes
from Bournemouth. They were the only two guys, unless you might know others that I know, that were potentially linked with that position. Now as I said, we're now in November. I think there's no way they're going to bring in someone in the middle of the season. As I said, first and foremost, they need to get a chief executive in, because there's no point bringing a director of football in if the director of football can't work with the chief executive. And then normally the director of football is involved with the chief executive to pick the manager. So we already have a manager. We have no director of football. We have an acting CEO, and the manager is basically trying to plug holes, looks like, saying we're hopefully getting this person in, we're hopefully looking to get that person in. So yeah, I mean, we're lucky that the football is going so well for us, because if it wasn't, and I think we said it as well, if the football hadn't been going so well on the pitch, they'd be similar to last year's scenes. People would be just going bananas. So I don't know. I mean, they've only brought in the one guy, said the sports science guy is the only guy that I think that they've brought in. What other than that, it seems to be nearly like it's Ange is looking at these positions and trying to fill them with Michael Nichols. So, as I said, I think the director of football certainly for this season is dead in the water, in my opinion. Anyway, I think I'd have to agree with Barry on that one. I can't see them bringing anyone in for that. Not this season anyway, unless things change. Maybe, I don't know. But maybe, as I said, Ange probably has more pressing concerns trying to get in head scouts. I know that was mentioned, as you said, in the AGM about scouting and stuff like that. So that's probably more something that Ange can get involved in. He might know people where he's worked with or stuff like that. But I don't know. There's an awful lot of stuff that seems to be trying to get resolved, and you know, it should be done. It should have been done a long time ago. You know what I mean? Ange shouldn't be left with a lot of this stuff on his plate. I don't think it's very fair. So I don't know what they're going to do, but they need to try to fill those positions. But as I said, when you don't have a proper CEO and you don't have a director of football in, so they're the main two positions. Obviously, manager as well. You know, you're struggling from the word goal. Like,
of course, this was kind of one of the first AGMs that people could contest the appointments of board members to the board, and it kind of reflected how the disconnect between Celtic supporters and the board is at the moment. 90% of them were in favour of Ian Banker and Brian Wilson not to be appointed to the board. It was an embarrassment to the two lads, you know, that Celtic fans don't want them to be on the board. Terence, I know you spoke about this on Discord, so I'll come to yourself about this first.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is the people who are there are shareholders. They're owners of the club. Might be only small shares, but they're owners of the club. They care about the club, and they see clearly. Like, I mean, if 90% of the people in the room say that they don't want you up there, I mean, that's a fairly big indictment on how bad you must be like. And it's poor, in my opinion, that you've got that many shareholders in the room that say 90% of us don't want you, but then the board can vote themselves. And I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Desmond's vote obviously had a major vote, and it counted on keeping Bankia as the chairman. I mean, he wasn't even at the meeting. Like,
I was just about to say that it was a bit of a thing, Terence, that it was his vote that's keep the lads on the board, and he wasn't even at the meeting to hear the fans being vocal against these two lads being appointed to the board, show their unhappiness with the board, and there he is then casting his vote to get them back on the board, you know.
Also, it also says a lot, Paul, that he's not there, but his casting vote is to keep them on the board. So he, in his head, already has an idea that when this goes to the floor, these two guys aren't going to be wanted here. But my vote, I've told my son, you vote for Bankia and you vote for the other guy. You vote for those two guys. Don't care what happens on the floor. If it goes to a vote, my vote is I want him as chairman. So do you know, it's crazy. Like, I mean, even Ian Bankia's whole, if you read through the AGM, his whole performance in the AGM is pathetic. He's a guy and we've asked this question so many times, what does a chairman do? He's in any AGM, whether we've all probably been in AGMs with our clubs or whatever, whether it be football teams or rugby teams or golf clubs or whatever. Like, the people on the board are there to answer the awkward questions. It's all well and good answering all the nice questions and the good questions, but it's to answer the awkward questions. And I mean, Ian Bankia's responses when he was asked about the ones I know you're going to talk about, referees and all that, and his responses, we don't run the SFA. What kind of a response is that? What kind of a response is that for the chairman of the club to give a shareholder who's down on the floor asking a genuine question and asking that, and then the same with the Higgins question, basically saying he says he can't give any assurances and won't address the issue directly. So basically, two major issues that fans want to talk about, and he's basically gone, nah, I have no interest in talking about either two of them, even though it's an AGM like. But I'll talk about how good it was, how good Peter Lawwell was for getting in Ange Postecoglou, and how good this was and how good that was. No, talk about the bad stuff. This is the stuff we're asking you. We want answers. You're expected as the chairman of the club, as a chairman of a PLC, to give an answer. It mightn't be the answer, might be an answer that someone likes, but it has to be a better answer than what he's given.
Barry, it was a slap in the face to these small shareholders who showed their disconnect towards Ian Barker and Wilson, and for them to be reappointed to the board. Then again, like it just shows Celtic out now at the moment, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's another slap in the face, Paul. One of many that supporters have had to face over the last wee while. But yeah, I mean, again, I've got to agree with Terence. You know what he said. I mean, the questions that were asked, for me, they're not difficult to answer. They're not difficult questions to answer, but it just again shows the huge disconnect. For me, it's irreparable now. There's no way that the relationship between the
that's
fans
where
and
it's
the board
looking into.
can be
It's
mended.
unrepairable. Yeah.
And things like the Bernard Higgins situation. That's, I mean,
Come
if
to that,
it
Barry.
wasn't,
Yeah.
oh sorry, right. Well, we'll leave that one out. But I mean, going back to the relationship with the board and it won't be repaired. And Desmond reintroducing these guys back onto the board, Brian Wilson, Ian Bankier. For me, it's just another show of this mentality of that. This is the way the board are. This is the way we don't want to revolutionise the club. We're quite happy to go with the way things are. Have the same people there, the same ideas. Again, just got to agree with everything sort of Terence just said there. It's not good. It's not good at all, in my opinion.
Well, it is. It's just jobs for the boys. That's all it's done. All it's like to be jobs for the boys.
Celtic supporters spoke about the shambles of last season, being treated by the Scottish FA, being treated different by the Scottish government after a trip to Dubai, and how we became a Champions League qualifying team to a struggling Europa League team under this board. It's the strategy. It was a strategy about staying ahead of the zombie club, and they told the board, as board members, you should be resign. There was no holding back here by I think it was Janet Fenney who said this to the board here, like that. It's been no secret from myself and Mark on this podcast that we've constantly said about this board that it was about being ahead of Rangers, winning. I think there was no kind of future, Barry, of expanding towards Europe, and I'm very surprised at that, considering how much money there is now at Europe, Barry, that we should be making the most of it, getting into the Champions League group stages.
But again, Paul, it's like this mentality that the board have. They've never been one for putting a huge focus on things. If they'd done things differently, we might have had more Champions League exposure. But they've always kind of ran with, err on the side of caution when it comes to strengthening the squad, when it comes to the level of players, level of quality player that was signed, when it comes to the certain markets that we'll look at to sign players. Now, listen, I know that we can't compete with certain markets, and I know we can't compete with certain leagues, but when you look at the Champions League and other clubs that have managed to do it and get into the Champions League, like Ferencvaros, for example, like the Midtjylland and all these smaller clubs, Bate Borisov, they've found a way to do it. But for me, it's never been a real priority of the board.
No.
The priority board was domestic domination, and they were quite happy with that. They didn't really look beyond that. To basically win everything domestically was a tick box for them. But us as supporters, we want to see the club do well in Europe and be able to find a way to compete, because the Champions League now, it's difficult because of the gap. The amount of riches in the Champions League is just ridiculous. But next season, this season's league winners, they're going directly into the Champions League. So there's your carrot right there. There's your guaranteed 40, 50 million. I don't know what it is. And we need to find a way, if Celtic, first and foremost, we need to try and win this league. And then secondly, if we're fortunate enough to do it, we need to find a way to try and be competitive, or to try and, find a way to be competitive and not humiliated in the Champions League. But going back to your point, Paul, for me, they've never really shown a great desire to conquer, or find a way to really try and tackle the Champions League. Because
it's even at that, Barry. Like there was never. There should have been never a reason that Rangers were left come close to Celtic. We should have always been ahead of Rangers. That I think that's the main fault of that. Now I know there was kind of different things last season and stuff like that. Things didn't work out and stuff like that. But Celtic never invested in the squad properly, and that's due to the fact of a director of football not being involved at the club. When you have your CEO buying players who clearly aren't good enough, buying squad players who aren't even making the bench, just making your squad bigger, and that's been the main fault when we hit these Champions League qualifiers, was signing players who just aren't good enough.
Yeah.
Sorry, Paul.
Terence, yeah.
Sorry, Paul or Barry. I was just going on the point what you're saying, Paul. Like you're talking, and Barry was saying it there as well. We got 36 or 37 million for two fullbacks in the last, between Tierney and Frimpong. Last season we had two loan signings there. We had John Joe Kenny and we had Laxall. So they got 37 million, but they got two loans instead. That's what you're talking about when you're talking about the ambition of the people that are at the top table. Like they're taking 30 million in over that period of time, and you're playing in the league last season with two guys that are basically loan players.
It's not about the spending, Terence. It's about having someone who identifies the right player, and that's just what we haven't been doing, or we would just be signing players just for the sake of it because they were the cheaper option. Do you know what I mean? That's the way it kind of looks at, like,
But that's what I'm saying about bringing in the John Joe Kenny. John Joe Kenny was only he was a cheap option. He was over Schalke. They didn't want him. They couldn't wait. And he was at Celtic. He was atrocious. Like he was atrocious. Like that's my point. Was they were willing to bring him in, and he was probably on good money. They were bringing him in, willing to be is a cheap option to get into play rather than going and spending a few pounds, even if it's 3, 4, 5 million on a fullback, that they could go, okay, the likelihood is we'll have this guy for the next 4 or 5 years. I just, that last season was just a disaster, and I just think the powers to be, especially back then, had no interest in spending money, none whatsoever.
Barry, do you want to come in there?
I think I agree with you, Paul. I mean, there obviously has been money spent. I'm sure if you pull up a stat, it'll say, X amount, the board that I've spent X amount of money. You can't deny that. But it's like you guys have said, it's the level of player that they've brought in. So whilst, we've sold some terrific players that we've had in our squad, your Tierneys, your Dembélés, your sort of Edwards, etc., Frimpongs, like that. Whilst we've sold it, it's the level of player that we've gone and replaced them with. And I think that's been the problem, along with the whole loan market option. We've spoken about it before, we had too many loans in our squad, and the majority of them never worked out. They never worked out, the loans. For whatever reason it may be, they just weren't good enough. or circumstances dictated that the move didn't work out for them. So as a result, what happened was when you've got all these loan players going back to their clubs, it leaves big gaps in your squad. And if you're not prepared to spend the money to plug these gaps, all you can do is look to bring in either free transfers or replace them with other loans, and that was an issue. So I think, like I say, you talk about Cian Tierney. We've still not solved that left-back problem.
And we have
five players.
We have five. We have Taylor. We've Bolingoli. We've Scales. Montgomery. So we 4 left backs, right, at the club at the moment.
Plus,
and that,
if you count Laxalt in that as well, he was brought in. So
and we still haven't replaced it,
Again, that's sort of poor recruitment. And again, it goes back to the fact that the players that we've lost. Now, don't get me wrong. When you've got a player like Cian Tierney or a player like Moussa Dembele, you're not going to go and be able to sign a player of that quality. But what you want to do is you want to try and find someone like for example, an Edouard. Edouard will manage to. But what you need to remember is that Edouard was brought to the club while Dembele was still there. But we've signed guys like Bayo. We've signed guys like Ayete that's not worked out. There's been a number of players bought, and it's been a real sort of poor recruitment. I think that's what you would call it, poor recruitment. For every maybe one good signing we've had 4 or 5 bad ones, and I think that's something that we need to address and we need to get better at.
As Barry was saying there, I said I'd touch on it. Bernard Higgins' appointment was brought up by Janet Finley and said that this appointment would be a slap in the face for Celtic fans. Ian Banker wouldn't address the situation directly and won't give any hints if Bernard Higgins would be on the Celtic payroll in the future. This looks to be like another deal that's going to be done behind closed deals, regardless of how the Celtic supporters feel, Barry. So I will be you in, Barry, there, because you wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, again, Paul, it's just, it's difficult to talk about, to be honest with you. It's just a horrendous decision, because, okay, granted, he's not been appointed yet, but I think Ian Banker's response to that, where he basically refused to deny that it was going to happen, tells you that the likelihood is this guy is going to come and play. This was a guy that sort of terrorised fans back, was it 9 years ago or so, responsible for identifying these so-called, problems to the club, which there weren't. And this is a guy that's now going to be chief of security. I don't know how many times I have to say it again, just another example of where the board and the fans are at.
It's shocking. And when we spoke about this, we had Terence on, and we had fans on the live chat talking about it, and they known people, Mark known people who got abuse off this guy and stuff like that. For me, hearing about it here in Ireland and Terence hearing about it, it's how can the Celtic board even sit down in a room with this guy and discuss the contract, Barry? It's just shocking. And more as we're going into this AGM and we're talking about it, the more and more you can see the disconnect between the fans and the board, and you can see why the likes of the Celtic Trust, Celtic Change Forever, the Green Brigade, you can see why all these fan groups want change at the board, because of these decisions they're making, Barry.
Yeah, something, Paul, it's just like when we talk about, the disengagement and the relationship, it's so far apart, it's incredible. And you know what, to even have this guy in consideration for an appointment as head of security, it's, what I would say it's disgusting. It's a disgusting way for the board to treat the fans. This was a guy that terrorised Celtic supporters, certain individuals, treated them as criminals. For what?
Mm-hmm. For supporting their club.
What was their crime? Supporting their football club. And now this is a guy that the Celtic board deem acceptable to be appointed head of security. I mean, I don't know what else I could say, Paul, about my opinions on the board. I don't care if we win the treble along with the Europa League this year.
See, Mark has been saying that for years, Barry.
You know, my opinion will not change on the board until the whole board and even Dermot Desmond, until there's a new tenure in place, I don't believe we'll move forward. And we'll certainly not. This relationship between both of us will never be healed.
No,
it'll simply never be healed. Even if they don't appoint Bernard Higgins, it'll never be healed. It's gone too far now. So that it's going to remain until the day that the board are no longer, or Dermot Desmond is also no longer. There'll never be a relationship there.
Because when we had, Mark's been saying it for years on the forum as well, like that, these things were kind of forgotten by this generation of new fans who just saw Celtic winning trophies and stuff like that, and kind of they weren't looking at these problems in the boards. But when we had Jana Fendi on the podcast, she was saying, like, fair enough, Celtic were winning and stuff like that, and long may that continue. But Barry, these problems have always been there, and they've never went away. For years and years, Paul, and that's the thing. And you're right in what you're saying. Mark's spot on what he's saying as well. You know, the sort of newer generation of fans, and this isn't disregarding the newer generation of fans, but what they've been used to on the park is domination. Mm-hmm. And Celtic have dominated, quadruple trebles, 9 titles in a row. That they've really been the dominant force. And whilst that's happening, a lot of things are forgotten about. Whilst the team's delivering on the park and delivering trophies and delivering attractive football, and some star players are on the park, a lot of what's going on behind the scenes is forgotten about, and it cuts the board a lot of slack. But it doesn't get away from the fact that things aren't great behind the scenes, and the way the club's being run isn't great and hasn't been for a long time. So, like I say, last season was the first season in 9 whereby Celtic didn't deliver a trophy, which is unacceptable at a club like Glasgow Celtic. So what happens then naturally is the problems that have been there for a long time, they then rise to the surface. And people realise that is a problem, but it's not a new problem. Mm-hmm. It's a problem that's been there for a long, long time. It just so happens that the heat's been taken off the board because the team have been delivering on the park. And that's why it's come to the forefront over the last 12 months, because last season the team didn't deliver on the park. We came in 0 trophies. It was a rubbish brand of football. We were an embarrassment as a football team. So as a result, people then start to think, well, and look what's happening behind the scenes. Look at what the board have done or what they've not done, and the negligence and the fractured relationship and the lack of communication between the board and the fans. That all then rises to the surface because of what's happened on the park. They've only got away with it for this long because we've been dominant on the park. Mm-hmm. Next up was stadium redevelopment, and there will be no redevelopment in the near future due to the loss of revenue due to COVID and failures to qualify in Europe. The near future is about investing in the first team and backing Ange. Terence, I think you can kind of agree with that at the moment, the reinvestment in the stadium, and that the main focus now is getting the first team up and running under Ange and backing Ange.
Oh yeah, well, with 100%, Paul. Ange is the person that needs to be backed first and foremost, because if they're saying that, well, we can't, the developments and things are on back burner because of failing to qualify for Champions Leagues and all that then Ange needs to be backed, as Barry has rightly said there a while ago. They're saying the winners of the league this year look for all intents purposes going straight into the group stages. That's basically pick a number, 40, 50 million. So, I mean, come January, if Ange wants 3, 4, 5 players, the board need to back him. They need to get him the 3, 4, 5 players he needs. He's the guy that they need to back now. Yeah, I can agree with the stadium stuff and everything at the minute. That has to be possibly on hold with what happened with COVID and everything else. But back Ange what he needs. Give him what he needs. Give him the guys on the field. Give him the guys off the field. Give him the guys he needs, and we can see so far he's transformed the place in 5 months. What'll he do in 12 months if he's back? If he's back fully, he'll probably go on and win the league, and there's 40, 50 million into Celtic. You know, it's a no-brainer, like.
Mm-hmm. Financial fair play was brought up in 2016. Scottish clubs voted down financial fair play. Bankers said we are represented on the board of the ECA, and we are trying to tighten in the rules, but we don't govern the game. And due to COVID, a lot of teams were given more leeway. Barry spoke this numerous of times about financial fair play and thing, and it's not just to benefit Celtic here. It's more about Scottish football as a whole. Due to COVID, there's a lot of clubs in debt. There's a lot of clubs who can't get day-to-day means and stuff like that. I'm not naming there's any clubs, but it reflects bad on Scottish football if clubs will go into administration again and liquidation. You know, it's a benefit to no one. It's no benefit to Celtic. It's no benefit to our neighbours. Or if clubs start going into liquidation, and something needs to be done here that clubs can only spend within their means. You know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, pandemics had a massive effect, and to be perfectly honest with you, I think a lot of clubs have done well to survive this, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm honest, you know, because I think back, you know, a lot of consensus was you know, in the media, and you know, you listen to radio phones and stuff. A lot of the consensus was certain managers were coming out in the lower Scottish leagues and saying, I can't see, unless we start to get fans in the door, I don't see how my club's going to survive. There was teams that didn't have players, teams that had registered one player. You know, so to be where they are is a credit, and the fact that we've got through this. But, you know, with regards to the sort of financial fair play, I didn't really notice what was said about that in terms of the AGM. That's a part of it I missed. But
I think it's a bit like Bankers kind of saying like that he's not saying it, like, you know what I mean, that he really can't do nothing about it.
He likes that phrase, Paul, though, doesn't he?
Yeah, like
that
seems
phrase.
to be, when I was reading through the AGM, that was kind of like, this is, as Terence was saying there in the podcast, like, this is our chairman, and the chairman's role is to keep the club running on a daily basis and go to these meetings and speak for the club. But every question he was asking about important things was, oh, we don't govern the Scottish FA, we don't think. But have you? We don't want to know that. We want to know, have you spoken to the Scottish FA about this, and what did they say, Barry? Do you know,
it's about challenging them.
Yeah.
In certain cases, it's about posing the question, because I think all too often we just accept a lot of things, or the board just accept a lot. It's like they don't want to upset the apple cart. And there's certain subjects, you know, well, multiple subjects. You know, I don't know if you're going on to referees and things like that, but there's subjects that need to be questioned. You know, us as supporters get frustrated, you know, and the board there are to represent our football club, and we are part of the football club. And so I think, like I say, all too often, there's certain things and certain questions that the fans will pose to our football club, to the board, and it's a very easy out just to say, well, you know what, it's not us that make that decision. Well, we know it's not you that make that decision, but what we're asking is, have you challenged it? Have you went to them and said, well, we want answers on certain decisions and certain situations? Because for me, that doesn't happen. The club just accept far too much.
Terence, come in here.
I have to agree with Barry wholeheartedly on that, and that's the thing. If the fans are asking the questions, it's the club need to go to the SFA and look for an answer and get an answer. Like, it's before, when I always remember when the season of going for the 10 in a row, the start of that season, the ex-Rangers manager came out and he basically went on a rant to basically go, referees never give us decisions, everything goes against us. He went on for basically about 10 minutes going on about, we don't get fair decisions, we don't get 50-50s, referees seem to always give the decision the other way, they seem to be biased, they seem to be this. I'm not saying it had any great effect because half the referees support the club anyway. But for that season, they literally went through it was like nearly a mandatory penalty or mandatory red card. Now, I'm not saying it had any great bearing in it, but he made it known. He put it out there, and the fact it was Stephen Gerrard and blah 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 and all the rest of it, he basically said he called referees out on it. He called him live. It was on the television. He called him live and out in it. Celtic, like Barry is saying, are willing to bury their head in the sands with some of the stuff that's going on, some of the decisions that's going on, instead of just going, look, we need clarity on this. Like, am I mistaken? And one of you will be able to answer this. Was Willie Collum or something basically near on banned from refereeing?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he didn't get a game for
a long time.
I think after a long time at Ibrox against Rangers, he didn't get a game for it. Yeah, he didn't get a game in a long time against Rangers. Willie Collum, you know.
Yeah, do you know, because they basically questioned it. They basically questioned his ability as a ref, or whatever we call it. Basically said, look, we don't think we're getting a fair hop off this guy. And basically, and the SFA basically, he wasn't refereeing their games.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if Celtic keeps putting their head in the sand and going, not opening their mouth and fighting their corner, you'll get the decisions. You'll get the decisions you're going to get. You'll get the nonsense that went on yesterday in the semi-final.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Just going on there, Barry, what Terence was saying there, he kind of jumped ahead of me there with the referees' decisions and stuff like that. But I'll come to it now. It was brought up yesterday about the standards of referees in the game, and Bankers again. Decision was we don't govern the referees. There's a process for hiring referees and stuff like that. But coming back to yesterday's game, when there was a blatant elbow on Welch, and again it was overlooked with just a yellow card. In any other country, that's a straight red. I know there's VAR coming in, and that's a different subject. And Celtic said that they're vocal about VAR coming in, that they know the standards have been poured. They said that previously before this AGM, but like Terence was saying there, like Gerrard came out and he slated the referees, and things changed for Rangers massively. But again, it's not a kind of area that was just closed off by Celtic yesterday.
Yeah, and you know what? First of all, I will say it's a red card yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
That is a red card. I mean, at first, I thought it looked bad at first, but then I thought to myself, the guy's maybe just using his arms as leverage. No, that's a bad one. That's nasty. That was a red card, and it wasn't given. But Terence is bang on. Like Gerrard, he questioned every decision. Like I always recall. It was an incident at Pittodrie. They drew. Did they draw? I think they drew 2-2 with Aberdeen at Pittodrie, and he gave. Did he give it?
Beeson. Was it Beeson? He walked off the pitch with Beeson.
This was Rangers against Aberdeen at Pittodrie, and he gave Rangers a free kick on the edge of the box when it was inside the box, and he came out and he slaughtered. You're right. It was John Beaton. Sorry, you're bang on. It was John Beaton, and he slaughtered him for it. And he even went as far as to say that I've spoke to him after the game and he's apologised to me. He says that he got the decision wrong. He had no right to say that, because a referee's not allowed to come out and defend himself or turn around and say, yes, I got it wrong, or no, I didn't say that to him. Gerrard questioned everything. Is it any coincidence that the decision started to go for him? But we've never done that as a club, as anything. We've not, and I'll tell you something, we've had a lot more to question than I would imagine they have.
But it's true what Mark is saying. It's a pity he's not on us tonight, because of his mind to say it. Like we won the game yesterday, right? Celtic or Ange should come out, or even the St. Johnstone's manager should come out and criticise the performance of the refereeing yesterday. You know, it seems like not just do it, Barry, because we're losing games and we criticise the referee, we blame the referee then for it, but criticise performance of the referee when we win the game, so we don't look like sour grapes, you know?
Yeah, that's it. You know, it's not when we'll lose matches. It's not a case of, and like I say, we're not here saying that the referees are biased. You know,
it's just bad, Mark. They're just bad, Barry. Yeah.
The standard of refereeing is poor, and it's been poor for a long time, and it's not getting any better. But until the clubs get together and do something about it or voice it, it's not going to get any better. And these referees are not answerable to anybody. Somebody has a bad decision, a referee has a bad decision. What happens is they go down in the referee in Alloa game or a Queen's Park game for a week, and then they're back up. That's their kind of punishment. That can't happen, because we need to have a better standard of referee in our game. It's as simple as that, because they can't be making. Now, granted, we don't have VAR in this country, so other countries have the help of VAR, but we don't have that. But we need our referees to be better.
But Barry, will it change if we have VAR? When you have the same people, do you know what I mean?
It should change, because it's there in, not
black and white in front of you.
It's there for everybody to see. What we need people who control the VAR. That's the question that remains. Who's going to control? Who are we going to employ to control VAR, etc. But with regards to that, there's no doubt about it. And it's not just Celtic or Rangers.
Oh yes, across every club.
It's every club. There's issues with every club. Every club have come out, managers. I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent here. The Madden sending off the boy for Aberdeen yesterday. I mean, what's that about? The guy gets assaulted. He's on a pitch and he gets assaulted by a fan. Now, he's confronted. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't raise his hands. He doesn't shout, and Madden sends him off. Mm-hmm. It's just the standard of refereeing is just beyond me. But it's not something new on the podcast. We've mentioned that every guy that contributes to the podcast, as well as the guys that type in and stuff, we're all of the same opinion that the standard of refereeing is terrible in this country.
Mm-hmm. Before we move on, sum up the AGM, Barry. You said that you were more concerned about this AGM than previous ones, and why was that? Yeah. And what has come out of this AGM, Barry?
I think for me, because of the state, is that the right word? Because of the way the club is and the situation the club finds itself in at the minute, in terms of the football operations, as we like to call it. Like I said, this was a big AGM for us, our biggest one in years, because last year's the club were just starting to fall apart, for want of a better phrase. It went the way, unfortunately, that it did. Delivered a trophyless season. The manager left in February. The whole football department was left in bits. And like I say, we're now at a new AGM in November 2021, and the club's not overly further forward, apart from the manager we have in place and the team on the field. We're still no further forward with the football operations side. So for me, to sum it up, the AGM for this year, it's left more questions than answers. I didn't get what I was hoping to get out of this in terms of what direction the club's going in. To be perfectly honest, I don't think any of those questions were answered, other than we're looking at it.
Terence?
I just think what came out of it, Paul, was it just proved that there's probably a bigger disconnect between the board and the fans than people actually think. You have a chairman that has no interest in interacting with fans, no interest in asking the hard questions, and basically overall it was a very, very poor AGM, and to be honest, probably a waste of an evening for a lot of people who turned up there. Mm-hmm. Because people turned up there genuinely diehard fans who bought into the club, asking genuine questions, looking for genuine answers, and they got basically nothing. That's all they got. They got no answers. They got silly answers and childish answers from Banky. Like you mentioned, we don't run the SFA, and I'm not going to talk about Higgins. I'm not going to discuss that. They knew these questions were going to come up. They knew these were going to be the questions and they just refused to answer them. So I just think on a whole, it just shows that there's a bigger disconnect between the guys on the board with the fans than there ever was. And it just, overall, it was very, very poor from Celtic. Very poor.
Moving on before we close the show, Celtic will return to Europa League action on Thursday night when they travel to Germany to take on Leverkusen at 6:15 early kickoff. Celtic sit third in Group G. It's Leverkusen on 10 points, Real Betis in second on 8 points, and Celtic on 6 points. Celtic played Leverkusen on the 30th of September at Celtic Park, losing 4-0 to the visitors. It's going to be a tough ask for Celtic in Germany on Thursday night, as we saw that Leverkusen are a class ahead of Celtic at the moment in terms of players, player style. Barry, any kind of positive result here on Thursday night would be a benefit to Celtic, and it would set us up nicely for the game against Real Betis. But it's going to be a tough night for Celtic, isn't it?
No doubt about it, Paul. You know, they're a good side, Leverkusen.
Like, we have to be honest, like, you know what I mean? You're not
Yeah.
going to say, you know what I mean? You know?
They're sitting. I think they're sitting fourth in the Bundesliga just now. They're a good side now. I think they've got a few injuries, but listen, that doesn't take away from the fact that, you know, that they're right, and it's going to be a tough night. But at the same time, I think we're better prepared now than we were when we played them at Celtic Park. I do believe we're in a better place. We've had a wee run of consistency, a run of good results. The team's relatively settled, and also the fact that Leverkusen, you would think, would have the majority of possession, given the style of play they have and the level of players that they have, it might be suited for Celtic a counter-attacking game. We've got the players to counter-attack. You know, this is where a Kyogo can really exploit space. This is where a Bada, Forrest, or a Jota can really, you know, use their sort of traits, if you like. So, illusions, it's going to be a difficult game. I've not given up complete hope. If we can get a point,
especially when we have a lot of our players as well, you know, back from injury, Barry. Like, we had a lot of injuries when we played them first time round and stuff like that. And like you said there, we have a few wins under our back. We seem to be playing well, and we don't seem to be conceding goals lately, you know. But a draw would be an acceptable result for me. I'd be over the moon if we got a draw there.
A draw would be a terrific. A draw would be a terrific result. And what as well is some of the performances we've had away in the European games have been very good. You know, you look at Betis, we didn't win the game, but we could and probably should have won that game. And Betis, we went to Ferencváros. So we've shown that we can go away from home and put on a show. If we can get a draw in Leverkusen, it would set us up brilliantly for an unbelievable match against Betis, because I think if we could take a point, because I don't envisage Ferencváros taking anything from Real Betis, if we could get a point in Germany on Thursday, it'd be a winner-takes-all game against Betis.
Be a cracker,
on the 9th of December, it should be an absolute beauty. So I just hope there's something to play for when it comes to that game, because that could be a really good night.
Terence, you want to come in there, bud, before we go?
Yeah, I'd be the same as Barry. I think Celtic need to put in a performance of the season to get something out of it, because we just don't come up against a class of player of this standard. You know, very they're so technically good. You know what I mean? I mean, we didn't play that badly in Parkhead, and you know, every time they seem to break, they break with speed and precision and passing. They're just, as I said, they're fourth. As Barry said, they're fourth in the Bundesliga. They're a very, very good outfit. I would love if Celtic could manage a draw. It would be fantastic. It would be just fantastic if they could manage a draw. But look, fingers crossed. As I said, the team is a lot more settled. You know, so, and maybe I don't think the team is as gung ho as they were when they played Leverkusen. Myself personally, I don't think we exposed ourselves as much in the back as we would back then.
That's what I was going to say, Terence, there, that in the first game against Leverkusen, they exploited our wing-backs because they were pushing up so far, and there was the space for Leverkusen to get into thing, and they were up against our two centre-backs, and there was no one there. You know, does Ange need to kind of fix that, you know, that we're not exposed on the wings as much as we were on the first leg against Leverkusen?
But I don't think we even leave ourselves that exposed in the league as we used at the start of the season. And I think the likes of, even as I said it earlier on when we were doing the ratings, the likes of Beaton in the last couple of games has added a bit more security to the back as well, because like we were playing Callum Mack there, and Callum Mack is a fantastic footballer, but he's not for me, he's not a holding midfielder. He's so much more better further forward. Whereas Beaton sit there all day, like, listen, who's to say that they don't start? There mightn't be a call to start Peter and McCarthy and leave Turnbull off and leave McGregor later forward and have a little bit more security at the back. You know, look, there's always hope. There's always hope. I think the best I think we would hope for is a draw. I hope I'm wrong, but I hope we can get a draw. You know what I mean? If we got a win, obviously it'd be sensational. But I think deep down, if Celtic could get a draw out of the game, it would be fantastic.
That's it for tonight, lads. Unfortunately, Mark, due to his technical issues with his microphone, couldn't be here tonight. I hope you enjoyed myself, Barry, and Terence holding the fort tonight. Thanks to you guys and on the live chat for joining us. That's it. Thank you and good night. That's it, lads.
Cheers, Paul.
Cheers.